Welcome, I'm your host Lee Adams and welcome to One on One. Today we have a very special guest, somebody that I've been wanting to bring to our studio for quite some time. An interesting way that we met, we have the makeup artist of the stars of the Metropolitan Pittsburgh, Mrs. Lori Geiger. Lori, it's great to have you.
Great to have you.
And Lori's going to do a little touch up on me as we start here. So I need all the help I can get. I really do. And the one thing about me and my skin is that it's so white, and I've always wanted some color. And Lori, are you able, in your makeup world, are you able to bring color to people that are like Casper, the friendly ghost?
Well, foundation really needs to be matched according to the skin on your neck. You really shouldn't try to change your skin. So you have to get the correct color. And then if you want to add some color, you can kind of cheat a little bit and put some blush on. Now for a man, it wouldn't be like ladies do on your cheeks. It would kind of be right in between here, because there's actually a vein in your forehead that when you are, you go out and run and walk or whatever, that actually flushes and gives you color here. And so for a man, you could do that. That's where you could add some color. Maybe a little bit, not the cheekbones.
Not the cheekbones.
Like a lady does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's great to know, because I've always wanted to have color my whole life. And I have a funny story. When I was in high school, I was playing basketball at Penn Hills High School, and I got this copper tone tanner, and I put a basketball jersey on, and I rubbed it all around, and it was right around the basketball jersey. And then when we were at practice the next day, boys would play shirts and skins. So that day I was skins. So I'd take my shirt off, and these guys are looking at me, and Shanky Carmack looks at me and he goes, "Lee, what is that?" I go, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "You look like a creamsicle." And I mean, it was like orange and white, and everybody busted out laughing at my expense. But the old sunless tanners were not the best, were they, Laura?
Oh, they were not. And we've really, really improved. And not only that, it had a smell to it that was really bad, and you would have to put them on very dry skin, and then you'd have to kind of stand around in your underwear for 30 minutes in order to let that dry so it wouldn't get on your clothes. But that product has been improved, and it is wonderful.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm still looking for the best of the best when it comes to that, because whenever I do that once or twice a year for something special, like my daughter's wedding. Like, I wanted to have color, and so I walked into the rehearsal dinner, and everyone's like, hey, and she walks up to me and she goes, "What's up with the tan?" I mean, she knew her dad.
Right.
And I just thought, well, we're going to take a lot of pictures this weekend. Let's have a little bit of color for once in a while. And so I always feel good when I have some color, and I wish I was born with it. But we all have different gifts in our life, right? And
right.
So I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
I met Mary. I met Lori by doing a commercial. Rob Calese has a law firm, and he asked me to do a commercial. So we got on to Green Tree Road, and the KDKA staff is there, and Lori's doing the makeup, and that's how we met. This was many years ago, and here we are in the studio, and we're talking about your life and so many famous people that you've done makeup with, and many of the stories and some makeup questions.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And so let's just talk about, what made you want to get into makeup? Why did you go in that direction?
Well, I wanted to be an architect. And when I went to a vocational technical school, you had to pick 3 areas. And, in case you didn't get your first one. So it was architect, interior design, or cosmetology. And I got cosmetology. So I figure I have to spend 3 years in this field. I'm going to learn this field. So being in the field or in the classes for 3 years, because you had to collect 1,250 hours in order to qualify to take your state board in order to get your license. Out of those years, I liked the makeup the best. And I said to myself, I'm going to move to Pittsburgh and I'm going to be a makeup artist. Now, I grew up in Somerset County, and everybody's looking at me like, ha, right. Oh, and all that did was add fuel to my fire. So
I love it.
So my mother signed for me to have, because I wasn't 18 yet, a little Avon route where I could go to ladies and sell them makeup and talk to the makeup and everything. Taking my Vo-Tech school education, applying it to the ladies and selling the Avon. I had 27 customers, and it was the best experience that I could have. And so I just went from there.
What high school was it?
Turkey Foot,
Turkey
Valley
Foot
area
High
in
School.
Confluence.
Is that
Pennsylvania.
near the mountains of Seven Springs out that way?
It's south of Seven Springs. It's Youghiogheny Dam, and now Confluence has bike trails and bed and breakfasts, and it's kayaking.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. So they added fuel to your fire because people just thought, yeah, right.
Right, they laughed
Victoria.
at me, yeah.
Yeah. But that added fuel, so you thought, I'm going to Pittsburgh, is what you thought.
Exactly right. And so I got a job at Horn's Beauty Salon, working with Arnold Zigarelli. And he did the hair, I did the makeup.
Now, he's a big star in Pittsburgh, isn't he?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, he was a big star nationally, too, because he and his brother did platform work for Clairol in New York City and all the big cities. You know, they went to teach other hairdressers how to do that.
Yeah. So what was it like working for Arnold Zigarelli?
He is just wonderful. He's an excellent teacher. He not only taught us how to work in the business, but he would teach people proper manners. The guys that didn't know which fork to use, kind of thing. He taught everybody about investment. You know, you have to save some money. Open a savings account. Don't spend all your money. And he did that. So.
Life skills.
Life skills, yeah. He was a really great teacher. He had all these wonderful sayings that he used to say. Like, for instance, and I always remember this one, true professionals respect other professionals in their field. So you and I do what we do, but we really need to respect our auto mechanic. You know, I love the garbage man when he comes every week and takes it all away. We all need each other on all of our jobs. So you respect other people in your field.
I love that. I mean, we cannot do it all by ourselves, so we have to work together. We can get a lot done together.
Yes.
And that's great that sticks out with you.
Right. And it really helped when you're a part of a crew and you're out on a commercial shoot and everybody has their job, the cameraman, the gaffers, the audio guy, and the producer. Drew Mignot, you know Drew.
Yes.
We'll use him as an example. I mean, because I work with him a whole lot. He was the producer, so everything goes through him. So, like for instance, I have to respect what he does, and I just do whatever I'm told. But I would never go over to the cameraman and say, that shot's a little off. Never.
And that comes from Arnold Zigarelli?
Exactly. All of that because I had to respect each and every person. And so it was vice versa. We had a wonderful crew.
So it sounds like he was a really great guy to start your career,
Yeah.
and you were impressionable at that time,
Yeah.
and he was pretty influential with you.
Well, when I was coming up in my career, I listened to successful people. They were successful. They made money. That's what I wanted to do. And so I did the makeup for Arnold, and in 1980, a new show came along called Pittsburgh Today, and it was Patrice King Brown was the host, and the producers there, who were our customers, asked Arnold to do a makeover segment. And he was on every Friday. Every once in a while, I'd jump on and talk makeup. But every Friday, we would do these ladies, and we were downtown Horns. We would cross Stanwick Street over to Gateway Center, and he would do his makeover. And they got so popular that we did it for Evening Magazine as well. So the Evening Magazine crew would come to our salon on Friday, evening, and we taped that Friday evening, and then that show would air on Wednesday the following week.
And who were the early stars of Evening Magazine? Do you remember who were the anchors of that?
Sure, John Burnett and Liz Miles, when I went there. I mean, I think it was Dave Dorian that was there, but I never knew Dave.
Yeah.
I came when John came afterwards. John also replaced John Wade on Pittsburgh Today with Patrice, and so he was doing both shows, and so that's how I worked with John. But
So Arnold kind of was a bridge for you to KDKA.
yes, along with every other hairdresser that ever worked with him.
Really?
He's phenomenal.
Yeah. And so how did that translate for you finally getting on with KDKA?
Well, we did the makeovers. And so the producers said, boy, your makeovers look so good for Arnold. Why don't you do some stuff for us? And they started giving me freelance jobs. The first show that I worked on was a Steelers Christmas. Jan Getz was the producer of that. And we taped that in the evening. And we had all the Steelers of the day. I remember Dwayne Woodruff,
Yeah.
who was the judge.
Yeah.
It was his era. And he stood out the most because I loved his wife. Her name was Joy, and she was just a lovely woman.
I think she's pretty accomplished herself.
Yeah.
Do you remember what years that
Well,
was?
that was early 80s.
Early 80s.
Early 80s.
So that was after.
That was 81 or 82.
Okay, so that was after the Steelers won all those Super Bowls in the 70s, the mid 70s and the late 70s. They went to 4 Super Bowls, won 4, 2, and then 2 years off, and then 2 in the late 70s. So this is right after we won all those Super Bowls, which was amazing. So the Steelers' popularity in the city, well, we don't have to say it, they are
Right.
number one. That's just
Right. Well, once a Steeler, always a Steeler. We worked with Franco for 30 years on different projects. And, you know, just all of the 70s guys, they come back. I mean, Pittsburgh loves them. Once a Steeler, always a Steeler.
Absolutely. We teach our kids that wherever you move in the world, you are a Steelers fan. And you see that in all these opposing stadiums. You see Steeler fans everywhere.
I know.
Yeah, so you did a lot of makeup for the Steelers, are you saying?
Yes, well, that was my first time working with the Steelers. And then we went on, when I was on staff, you know, where we went on to, Bill Schishler was the producer of the Jerome Bettis Show. And we did Jerome Bettis Show for the 8 years of his career. And we just watched him grow. And we would shoot, the first time we shot, we were over at Buffalo Blue, which was a club over in Shadyside. I think it's gone now. And then we went to Rosebud in the Strip, and then they built Heinz Field. And so we were at Heinz Field for the rest of that. But we did that 19, 20 years with different, Jerome, no, he retired. Heinz Ward took it next for a couple of years. One of the things I loved about Heinz was he would just come by himself with his shirt for the second show. And he wanted to get going. He wanted to stay on time because he worried about the school kids sitting in the audience, because he wanted them to get home, get to bed, because school was the next day.
Heinz Ward worrying about the school kids
Yes,
going
he
to
did.
bed. I love that.
Well, he had a son, so he knew what the kids needed to do.
And he was so beloved in this city. I mean, and I think men and women alike loved Heinz Ward. And why? Because he was so tough on the field. He was a big blocker and a great receiver, but someone would hit him so hard and they'd knock him on the ground, and he would get up and he's smiling. He's smiling. And so, like, how does that not endear him to, he played rough tumble football and he's smiling after he gets slammed to the ground. So everybody loved Heinz Ward, and everybody loved Jerome Bettis.
Oh, they sure did.
I mean, just two great personalities and Steelers superstars. So I want to go back and forth between some makeup questions and some stories that you have from all these famous people that you've worked with. The first, I think, really important one. I have some granddaughters, and 3 of them, and they're little Swifties, and they're going to be thinking about makeup in the future. And so Let's talk about age. What do you think, being such a makeup professional, what age do you think parents, it's okay to introduce your girls to makeup?
Well, you should introduce the kids to skincare first, because as a young woman or a young man, they start to get oily skin and they start to break out. And so if you have to take care of your skin in order to not have the breakouts, to try to control those blemishes and oil, so you would want to, try to make them cleanse their skin, because that way makeup will lay smoother and it won't look like it's there.
Oh.
See, and that's the part where parents and grandparents are going to love. And also, the products are so much different. The consistencies of products are nice and lightweight. Like there's a CC cream or a BB cream. Those are beauty balms or color correctors. Color correctors a young one wouldn't want. But there's, that's one product that has like 5 things in it, and it doesn't look like a lot of makeup. There's SPF. There's moisturizer, there's color, and what else? Oh, primer is in there. So one product, put it all on, there you go. The primer will help cut down the shine.
And so really, I guess maybe we're talking about the teenage years, whenever you're starting to break out with some acne. You're saying that skincare is the most important thing to start everything off.
Absolutely, skincare.
Yeah, so
Yes.
to clean it correctly and all those products for that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oil-free moisturizer.
Okay, so now that let's say that we're a teenager, some teenagers are going to watch this, and we're taking care of our skin and cleaning it correctly. Is there an age where you think it's okay to start to introduce the makeup?
Sure, like the eyeshadows and blushes
Yeah.
and things. Again, thankfully, right now, the trend, and it has been for a couple of years, is to go neutral. For young people, the perfect example is Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis has makeup on, but you can't tell because she has a lipstick that looks more, it's like one shade up from lip tone. She emphasizes her eyes with some neutral eyeshadow and some eyeliner and mascara. I mean, I don't know exactly what she uses. It's just me looking at pictures of her. I met her once too, and she did her own because she's used to it. But she was great. We're calling her, Miss Curtis. She's like, oh no, guys, no, please, call me Jamie. She was lovely. It was a children's hospital shoot. But I use her as an example because she is aging beautifully. She just blows with the flow.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when you get older, you want to kind of lighten up a little bit, just like you did when you were a kid.
And so, like on the bookends, you're saying just to be light.
Yes.
To be light walking into the makeup arena, and to be light on towards the
Exactly.
latter years of your life.
Exactly right. And of course, she's got a television thing. Television makeup and everything. But as far as daily, everyday makeup, yeah, start out light, and then you can add. So say you get in your 20s and you're going out on dates or you're going clubbing or something, yeah, then you can get a little heavier, on the makeup. Or if you're a professional, you might want to do it. Also, with doing makeup for doctors and lawyers and everything, even though I have a woman, I have to take that into consideration to give her a professional look, and not, red lipstick or strong blush, that kind of thing.
So today, what's your what do you have on today here sitting with us?
I have on concealer, foundation, powder, eyeshadow, eyebrows. That's an important one too. A little bit of eyebrow pencil, blush, and lipstick.
Yeah, what's up? What do you think about eyebrows, with women? Like some have. Well, what do you think about it? I don't even want to go into it. What do you think?
Well, eyebrows are like the frame to a picture, okay? And I think that more people should pay a little more attention to their eyebrows rather than loading up with dark eyeshadows or eyelashes. If you would just use, do your eyebrows according to your natural line. Maybe sometimes you have to have some waxing done or something to shape them a little bit. But when you have your eyebrow, say we just had a lady that had nothing on, and we put eyebrow pencil on her, her eyes would pop. We didn't put anything else on her.
Really? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the tricks of the trade. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I know with me, for guys, we have to trim our eyebrows. Is it the same for women?
Oh, yes, as we get older.
Yeah.
As we get older.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting about doing men's makeup, 9 times out of 10, there is always a scar from a childhood injury. Because little boys are pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
And so it's usually in the eyebrow, and I always say, oh, childhood, you know.
That's funny you say. I was just thinking about my scars, and I have them too as a boy.
Little boys, yeah.
Yeah, little boys, rough and tumble little boys. You know, today, Lori, social media is so big. You know, Facebook, I mean, you're on Facebook, I'm on Facebook, like for the dinosaurs. And then I'll speak for myself. And then Instagram is out there, but also TikTok. And I'm not on TikTok, but
Me either.
But I think that that's a big influential social media site for the young people. Mm-hmm. And so from what I understand, there's a lot of makeup videos on TikTok and Instagram and maybe even Facebook. Have you seen any on social media that you can speak to?
Well, I could pick out mistakes, that's for sure. Like for instance, when you put on liner, okay, you never stretch the skin. Never stretch the skin, because not only will it make a zigzag line, but it's, you know, the skin around the eyes is the most delicate part of the skin on the body. And so you don't want to be tugging around with that. As a matter of fact, when you do products around your eyes and you're using your fingers, you want to use your little finger or your ring finger, because they apply the least amount of pressure. So, like that.
Oh, there you go. Mm-hmm. There you go. How about these long eyelashes? What do you think? What are
bane
your
of my existence.
You don't like them?
Well, eyeshadow or false eyelashes could be a great tool to accentuate the eyes, okay? Not draw attention away from the eyes, but to enhance the eyes. So you have to consider eye color, hair color, you know, like a blonde or a redhead would not have this dark chunk on their eyes, you know, whereas a woman of color or a woman with dark hair or dark eyes, they can get away with a little heavier lash. But some of these lashes, let's just say if somebody notices your eyelashes before anything else on your face, your eyelashes are too big.
No good.
That's
no good.
right. It should be a uniform, you know, but eyelashes can be great, you know, but you just cannot. Some of them, I've seen some women just walking on the street where eyelashes so thick they have to lean their head back to see.
Goodness gracious. And from a guy's standpoint, it's not a big deal. Like really, the eyelashes aren't working for us. It doesn't matter to us, I guess is what I'm saying. But like, I think I could speak for a lot of guys that would say that.
You know, I read an interesting article. This is a while ago. Somebody did a survey on makeup for men, and the 3 things that men did not like, according to this survey, was eyelashes, pointy fingernails, and lip gloss.
Wow, those first 2, I mean, the real long fingernails, I just don't understand. And I know some women are obsessed with them, and you see them and they're hanging off their fingers, and I'm thinking, what is that doing for you? I don't get it.
Well, what can they do? You know?
Yes.
I mean, like I could never have that and work with people's faces. They would be afraid of me.
Yes, yes. So like, I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't understand that at all. I mean, I want to also, like I say, intersperse this with some stories of yours. And you've been at KDK for how long?
Well, let me see, it's 40 years, well, almost 40 years. 40 years. 40 years, yeah. Between starting with Arnold and getting the freelance jobs, and then in 1987, that's when they hired me and I became on staff. So yeah, we're 40 years.
Well, that's amazing. What a long career you've had, and met some incredible people. And we're going to start with some of these stories. And the first one we're going to start is a composer and a conductor. And this is a guy that has won 4 unbelievable. It's like the Super Bowl of theater arts, and that would be an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. Like, there's a very short list of people that have those 4. And he's written 40 scores of films, including Sting and The Way We Were, and the chorus line. And that would be Marvin Hamlisch. Well, tell us your experience with Marvin Hamlisch.
He was the nicest guy. He came to Pittsburgh a lot and came to Pittsburgh Today a lot. Or PTO, as they call it now. And but we had, various, like we would do a promo for a show he was doing. So we would go, that's when I would go do his makeup. And every time he looked at me, he would say, "Hey, makeup lady, think tan," because he wanted to be tan. But you know what though? I know, so do you. But he did have a little tan that I could work with, because again, you match the skin on the neck. Because the last thing you want to do is have white neck and have the makeup stopping here, giving the telltale sign.
Well, how about you do the neck too? Can you do the neck too?
No, it would get on the clothes. And that would be a telltale sign.
It's such a hard thing to have white skin in a society that reveres the tan. It's a struggle. It's a struggle that we have, us fair-skinned guys or people.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one is, it's not the bread. It's not the bread. But this guy was nominated for 72 Grammys. 72! And he won 20. And Moon River was one of his songs, and the Pink Panther. And he was so famous, they made a stamp about him, Henry Mancini. Tell us about, and not Mancini bread, but Henry Mancini,
Right.
the music superstar.
Well, when he was in town, Evening Magazine for a while, towards the end there, had a studio in the Hilton. And so we would do these one-on-one interviews and little special things up there. And half the time these people that came to the station stayed at the Hilton. I don't know what it's called now.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, so it was right next door there. And so one day I went over, and I knew we were going to work with him. And so I went over to get set up and make the coffee and everything. And I heard this little knock at the door. And I opened it up, and there's Henry Mancini. I said, he's all by himself. So I said, come on in. And he said, good morning. And I said, you want some coffee? He said, oh yeah, I want some coffee. And so it was just going. So we just sat down. We were just talking about things, Pittsburgh and everything. And then there came a louder knock at the door. Boom, 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 boom. Wow. And so I answered the door, and this whoosh, whoosh lady came in. Look, there you are. I was looking all over for you. It was his publicist. And, he just left his room and came down the studio on his own and didn't tell her. So, anyway, we got that shoot in.
Well, that's fun. That's fun. Now, let's talk about another big-time musical superstar. He has sold 35 million albums, singer-songwriter, and very, very a big part in the 1960s counterculture when they were singing songs protesting the Vietnam War and everything that was going on in our country. David Crosby of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So let's talk about him.
Well, David was in to promote his book, Long Time Gone, and that's why he was on our show. And so I did all of the guests' makeup for our Pittsburgh Today. And he was one of the shows in promoting the book. And so it was his turn to do his makeup. And so I'm like, I love your music. I said, I bought all of the albums, my albums, in CDs, because I have to listen to them. And he said, oh, that's great. And but so he said, can you cover up what I did to my skin? Apparently, when he was on drugs, he would just pick at his skin because he thought there was bugs there. And so he just made pock marks on his skin. Yeah. And so he just made some, like, it just looked like acne scars on it. So I said, oh, sure, we'll just polish that right up. And he was just wonderful. Was very quiet, very quiet.
I mean, there was a lot of drugs going on in the 60s, for
yeah,
sure.
he had his health problems. But
Yeah.
as far as me, that day working with him, I was very happy, and he was wonderful to work with. And signed my book.
Really? Well, that's great. I mean, what a huge musical superstar. I mean, and I always say, I've told my kids that we were fortunate to grow up at a time where I think it was the most golden era of music.
Oh,
The 60s and the
too.
70s. I mean, the 50s started it, but the 60s and the 70s was just the golden era. And you're talking about one of the real big superstars
The
of that era.
harmonizing between
Yeah.
the three of them
Yeah.
was just incredible.
Yeah.
But in the 60s and the 70s, every group had their own sound,
Yes.
I
mean, it's amazing to me how many huge worldwide superstars that came out of those 2 decades. When you think of the decades following that, or even prior to that, I think it pales in comparison. I mean, I don't know why it all came together at that time.
Yeah.
Woodstock and the hippies, and then all the classic rock, the soft rock, the rhythm and blues, the British invasion, the Beatles came to Pittsburgh. And so it was just a terrific time for music. Let's just talk about some of the trends. You talked about when you start out in makeup, you want to go light. When you go into your golden years, you want to go lighter. And so what trends have you seen in your career as a makeup artist?
Well, the change in the consistencies of makeup. So you can get any kind of level of coverage of foundation, which is really nice, because some people need a little bit more extra coverage. There's a product I use all the time called Derma Blend that is great if somebody has like a birthmark or something they need to cover. And you cover that and you put your foundation on. There's a cream to powder where you can just easily put that on. The BB creams, the CC creams that I had mentioned, like for instance the CC cream, a color corrector, if you have ruddy skin, would have a green, little bit of green in there to counteract that red. The products are incredible, and a primer is really, really nice because you put that on first.
Well, how about celebrities? How about celebrities and their influence on makeup?
Well, they definitely influence makeup because some of the cosmetic companies use them in their advertising. And so, but they're all beautiful.
Yeah, right.
Nobody is overdone. I mean, look at I can't even think of that cute actress with the dimples and Reese Witherspoon.
Oh,
and
yeah.
all those women are beautifully made up, but they look natural. So I think they're excellent examples to follow.
So you're saying that they use some really skilled makeup artists?
I would guess, yes.
Yeah, right. Now, back in the 60s, there was a show. They were singers, musicians, comedians, and you had an interaction with them, the Smothers Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were nationally known for the show that they did, and I think they got into a little trouble with the network because they were very controversial and talking about some political situations that were going on. So you had a chance to work with the Smothers Brothers.
Right. Well, during the WQED oldies concerts, I worked with them, and they were the hosts of the folk show when, like, Peter, Paul, and Mary was on, Roger McGuinn was on. I can't think of some other folks that were on. Who sang Even Destruction? Barry. Anyway, he was on. I loved him because I loved that song. Anyway, I went off on not thinking of those, but no.
The Smothers Brothers.
The Smothers Brothers,
Yeah.
yes. Well, I used Pancake. I mean, then high def TV, you couldn't use that, and they were used to Pancake makeup. And so
What is pancake makeup?
it's just you have to use water with it. It looks just like this. It's which is dry,
Yeah.
But you would have to wet the sponge
Okay.
in order to put it on.
Okay.
And the wetter the sponge, the more makeup you would put on. And so you had to squeeze the sponge really hard in order to get a light coverage. But anyway, they were used to their heavier makeup, which for their projects. So I still use that because we hadn't switched over to high def yet when I worked with them. But here's the funny part. So they liked that, so they came to me. But Tommy came to me first. And he sat down and he said, "Today is my birthday." I'm like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." And so he wanted a hug for his birthday. Okay, fine. Then his brother comes in and said, did he tell you it's his birthday yet? In other words, I said, "Yes." He says, "He just does that to get hugs from the ladies." He said,
Yeah.
"Tom." But,
You know,
I mean, they were always on.
Yeah,
know?
no, it's funny because Tommy was like the straight man, and he would act like he was dumb in the skits that they had, and Dick would always give it to him. But Tommy, I think from what I read, he was a lot smarter than people would think because he just played that in their comedy, and so he kind of gave it to you.
He did that.
You
I
got
mean,
a hug.
we're in a makeup room, you know. I fell for it. I gave him a hug.
Sure, I understand. I can understand. It's funny that they did that. It's really funny. Now, you mentioned Roger McGuinn of the Byrds, so you also had him at...
Yes, he was
one
on
point.
that same show.
Yeah.
Again, very quiet. He was cool. You know, he was just everything 70 cool that you would think of. And he's apparently, I mean, very known for his 12-string guitar. So my cousin Bob tells me, because he plays the guitar, and Drew said, "Oh my God, you did Roger McGuinn. You met Roger McGuinn."
Yeah.
And my cousin said, "You know, I played the guitar," and Drew said, "I play the guitar, and you meet Roger McGuinn." I'm like, "Yeah, I did."
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, I have had Rich Engler on here, De Caesar Engler Productions, and he wrote a book, Behind the Stage
I
Door.
read it,
Did
loved
you?
it.
Did
I
you?
did.
It's so good.
Oh, it is
I
so
wanna,
good.
And we did a show, and people loved the show, and I want to bring him back because he brought so many really great things with him. But one of the questions I ask him, I'm going to ask you. You have, and we haven't even got into all the rest of the stars and celebrities that you've worked with, but I asked Rich Engler, who has been with all the Beatles and the Michael Jackson and the Bee Gees, and I mean all the biggest of the big stars in music he's worked with, because they come here to do concerts in Pittsburgh. So I said, "Rich, were you ever starstruck?" And he said, yes. I said, "From who?" I mean, he's had the top of the top. He said, "Bob Dylan." He goes, "When Bob Dylan walked in, I was just looking at him thinking, my goodness, I'm sitting here with Bob Dylan." And he gave him a guitar, and he autographed the guitar for him. So I want to ask you the same question. I mean, you had some big stars here, influential figures. Who can you remember a time you were thinking, geez, look at this. I'm sitting here from Somerset, Pennsylvania,
Exactly
and here
right.
I am with, can anybody come
Oh
to
yeah,
your
David Crosby. That's
David
why I brought his
Crosby.
picture.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I was just in awe of him. You know, yes.
Yeah, so that's, and I understand. I mean, back then, you know, we had our albums and we're playing the albums. We didn't have social media.
I still have my albums.
Do you? Mm-hmm. Do you? And those albums, I mean, my first album, Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and that was my first concert. I mean, I just thought he was bigger than life.
My first concert was Alice Cooper, and I ended up doing his makeup years
goodness.
later.
Really?
Michelle at DVE had Michelle Michaels had called me and said, "Can you come over here? He wants, you know, they want him to have makeup because we're going to do a television thing. The television will be here too." And so I went over there to do him. He was, you know, really nice, sitting in a corner waiting for me, and his publicist gave me this Xerox copy of a face and said, "Here, this is what you do." And Alice does his own eyeliner because it's his signature, you know. And so it just said, you know, contour here, highlight there, and you know, so.
So your first concert, Alice Cooper, and you got to do his makeup.
Years later,
That's
yes.
amazing. That's amazing. How about the tall, thin Tommy Tune, the Broadway star?
Yeah. Tommy is so handsome and so nice. So we did shoot with him, and I did his makeup. But when I do the makeup, and we have different, scenarios, different setups, then I touch up every time, and every time I put powder on him, he got even more handsome. Not because of my powder, but because I'm just looking at him. I mean, and he was so talented, so tall. But I remember we were in the basement. I think it was the Benedum or Heinz. So I forget where we were, but we were walking to the next setup, and he had a little dog with him. And he and his dog are walking. Here he is, this tall, and a little dog. But I mean, the contrast was really funny. Yeah. But that little dog, that was Daddy for that little dog.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That just makes me think of something. You're saying how handsome Tommy Tune was. And you're working with all these celebrities in sports and show business and politics. And so I would think and that's one of the things that really sticks out to you for Tommy Tune is how handsome he was. Mm-hmm. Are there any other celebrities, male or female, that you're doing and you're thinking, goodness gracious, how good looking is this person? I mean, Tommy Tune really stood out for you because of how handsome you said he was. And so does anybody else stand out?
Christopher Reeve. Are you kidding? Christopher Reeve. Superman, yeah. We weren't allowed to say that, though. We weren't allowed to call him Superman.
And you were told
he
that?
He was on our project at the KDKA that we did for, it was called the Discovery Year, which is about the first year of a child's life. And so he was the host. So he flew in on his airplane. And here we are, 7 o'clock in the morning, and he's come over from the Hilton, and doing his makeup, and he had a little concern under his eyes too. But it's first thing in the morning, and he was very, very nice. But he was very, very concerned about how long it was going to take because there was a snowstorm coming in the afternoon, and he had flown his own plane in, and he was, and so the producer at the time was Arthur Greenwald, and you didn't rush Arthur. He was a perfectionist, and he had a plan. And Richard Reed, so sometimes you do a take over and over again. He didn't think it was necessary to do another take. I mean, I can understand where he's coming from. I mean, he's a movie star, I don't know how movie stars work on movie sets, but I just knew that. Anyway, we got it done, and it was a great show. And he flew out of there before the storm.
So Christopher Reeves was worried that he was going to be stranded in Pittsburgh because a snowstorm was coming.
It looks that way, yes.
This reminds me of a story from Rich Engler, the interview. So the Bee Gees, he wanted the Bee Gees to come into Pittsburgh. Well, that was during the time where the oil embargo and the gas crisis in the Jimmy Carter years, and there was these long lines at the gas station, and it was tough to get gas. And he wanted the Bee Gees to come to Pittsburgh. And so he called them, asked them, and they called him back and said, Rich, there's one thing that we're worried about. And he says, what? He goes, getting stranded in Pittsburgh. And he goes, well, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to guarantee that you can get us 1,000 gallons of gas something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And he said, well, let me get on it. And Rich was a troubleshooter because he wanted the Bee Gees to come. He knew what that would do for the city and for his business. And so he found the gas, he got it for them, and he meets them at a hotel out near the airport. And he goes to meet them, and English people have tea. And they're English, and they had tea. Let's have some tea. So he's sitting up having tea with the Bee Gees. I mean, to me, that would just be an incredible moment, right? And they told him, let's go over to the piano, we're going to play you something. He goes, we're working on a project. Well, what project is that? Well, this movie, they wanted us to make some music for this movie. What is that? Saturday Night Fever. And so he's playing music for Rich Engler, and they're thinking about working on Saturday Night Fever, and think of the smash hit that was.
Incredible.
It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing. But they, along with Christopher Reeves, did not want to get stranded in Pittsburgh. It's not so bad here, is it, Lori?
It's not.
We're okay.
I know.
We're friendly. We're friendly city.
That's right.
So it's funny. So like you talked about sports, and Bob Pompiani and Charlie Batch would do the Steeler games, and you worked with
Preseason. Yeah, we would carry preseason.
So talk about working with Bob Pompiani and Charlie Batch.
Well, Bob, I just adore him. I mean, he is just Pittsburgh loves Bob. He's wonderful to work with. He and Lisa, his wife, are just wonderful. He's a real pro. He has respect for other people in the field. You know, his producers, me, you know, because we all work together, right? But the interesting thing about what Bob does is, and he's put this on Facebook too, this isn't a big secret, is he does his own flashcards for the new players. But he not only has to do it for the Steelers, he has to do it for the other team, for the visiting team. So he has these big cardboard thing that he makes handwritten himself in order to, you know, before the game, you know, study that and study those. He's working the whole time, you know, so he is familiar to call that game. So that's
that
very
speaks to his
interesting.
preparation.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And you're right.
He's a real
Pittsburgh
pro.
loves Bob Pompiani. I
Yeah.
do. His daughter married my first-round draft pick in my Little League team. And I just think that's funny. But,
Which one? Chelsea?
well, I'm not sure
Or
which
Selena?
one, but I just
Okay.
see their pictures
Yes,
online.
wonderful family. He and Lisa are excellent parents, raised excellent girls. Now they have grandchildren. Just a wonderful, wonderful family.
Have you ever worked with Albie Oxenreiter, ever?
No,
No.
wrong
he's-
station.
Wrong station. Well, that's another wonderful guy right there.
I'll bet, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you a quick little story about Albie Oxenreiter. And so my son was in kindergarten with his son, little Albie, at St. Bernard's Church here in Mount Lebanon. And we had a birthday party for my son. And so Albie's like Bob Pompiani for sports. These are big stars in Pittsburgh. Sports is so big in Pittsburgh. And the sports anchors and the players, they're big stars here. Let's just say it. And so Albie walks into this little duck pin bowling alley where we were having the party. And he's like, hi, Lee, my name's Albie, da-da-da-da. And we had pizza. And what he started to do is he opens up the boxes, starts putting the pizza on little plates, and he's serving people. He's serving people. And I'm thinking, this is a big star here in Pittsburgh, and he's serving the kids pizza. I don't think you can have a better first impression. And ever
Exactly.
since then, I've just loved him. But I do also love Bob Pompiani, too.
But you know, the stations, when all of the, like the reporters are out covering the same story, you know, they have great respect for each other.
Yes.
You know, and if somebody leaves, they feel bad. If somebody gets sick, they feel bad. If somebody has a baby, they're happy. You know, they truly, you know, it's a small world.
Yeah, it is, and we're trying to get those guys to come in and be guests on our show. It would be great to see them. And so, you talked about early on you want light makeup. Later in your life you want light makeup, but you know there's always the Tammy Faye Baker sort of model, because I think she wore very thick makeup. I'm not a makeup expert here, but it seems like she was the one that really put it on. And when she was big on television, did that trickle to you at all, with people wanting like heavier makeup? And what do you think about heavier makeup?
Nobody wanted to look like her. As a matter of fact, I mean, she had, there was a makeup artist that finally got her hands on her. I don't know who it was, somebody, you know, far away from here, and she made her look beautiful. And Tammy Faye Baker was really a beautiful woman underneath all of that. She didn't like it, and she went back to her regular stuff that she did. But yeah, thick makeup, no, no, no.
It's a no-no.
There's something beautiful about everybody.
Yeah.
And so you just want to enhance what's beautiful about you.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I get it. I get it.
you don't want makeup to be the first thing people see.
That's right. That's right. And so going back to sports, I'm a sports guy. I mean, you talked about Jerome Bettis. You did the Jerome Bettis show for many years, right?
All his career.
Yeah.
And then it turned into the Heinz Ward show, and then it changed,
Yeah. So Jerome Bettis, I mean, you could not, that's another massive Steeler superstar Hall of Famer. I mean, he leaves his last year going to the Super Bowl in Detroit where he grew up. And all the players went to his mother's home and they had a big dinner and they win the Super Bowl. You can't have a better exit than Jerome Bettis.
What a wonderful career he had.
Unbelievable. He was just, when they were winning in the fourth quarter, they would just hand him the ball and he would just ramrod through the defense. And they never lost games when they had a lead and Bill Cowher would just give it to Jerome Bettis. But there was a really interesting article in the Post-Gazette about Jerome Bettis, and it said that after the games, the next morning, he had a hard time getting out of bed because the violence on that football field, I think we just look at it, it's just like, to us, it doesn't matter that much. That's just football, and they're just banging into each other. Well, it really matters to those guys that are getting hit like him, and he would get hit so hard. And so I just thought the article was fascinating because it showed the real life toll that it took on those players. So talk about Jerome Bettis, and he's another one. It seems like, and again, we see the personal side. I mean, we see their personality come through the television, but you see the personalities behind the screens. And so what was Jerome Bettis like to work with?
Oh, he was wonderful. I mean, he was a rule follower, whatever you need. Like, okay, he knew that he had a meeting that, like, Bill Schishler, the producer, would come in and talk to the whole crew, and, like you and I did, we're going to do this, this, and this. And then he knew he had to get his makeup, so he got his makeup, no problem. And he was just an absolute pleasure to work with. But I'll tell you a funny story. One day, we had both Mr. Rooneys on, Dan Rooney and
Art Rooney?
Dan and Art. Dan and
Art Sr., the
Art
old
Sr.
man.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
he was still living. We were down at Rosebud.
Yeah.
And so Bill Schishler, the producer in this meeting, said, Jerome, you're going to have to call one of the Rooneys by their first name. And Jerome said, no, oh no, I can't do that. No, Mr. Rooney, I can't do it, I can't, Anyway, this went on and on and on. Bob said, okay, Jerome, I'll do it. I know, I'll say, Dan. He would not call them by their first name. This just goes to show the respect that he was taught. And I worked with his mother too, Gladys, she was lovely. But his parents were excellent parents to raise him. Here he is, a big, football star and all this stuff, and he could have, But anyway, he turned around after they all left and they got that settled, and Jerome said, oh boy, I can't do that. My mom would kill me.
I love that. I love respect. I was taught respect as a kid. It was just something that was just drilled into my core that you respect people no matter what. And I love that story. Jerome Bettis, my brother's son, David Adams, who played middle linebacker at Central Catholic and holds their all-time record for most tackles, and they won a state championship and several WPIALs with him. He was recruited by a lot of colleges. He was a defensive player in the year of Pennsylvania, along with DeMar Hamlin the year before, and DeMar Hamlin's the kid that died on the field at the Cincinnati Bengal game. And so he was thinking about Penn State, but he took a visit to Notre Dame, and he got to meet Jerome Bettis on the sidelines. And at that point, I mean, Jerome Bettis is just an icon in Pittsburgh. He just is. So it was a real big thrill for him to meet Jerome Bettis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to work with him a lot.
I did get to work
and you
with
got
him.
to know him. And he was so respectful, and I love hearing that. That's a great story.
He was absolutely respectful.
Yeah.
They just he's a wonderful guy.
Yeah. And you also did College Game Day. And, I guess they come into Pittsburgh and they're doing the Pitt Panthers against somebody.
Right.
I go to Penn State and do the same thing. And tell me your recollection of College Game Day.
Well, College Game Day is a long day. It starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you go in. They bring their trailers. I mean, you're in a trailer and you do the makeup, and then they have their meeting, and then the show starts at 10:30. It did when I worked on it, and so they would set up the set with the city in the background, and this is like November. It's kind of cold out there in the nighttime. But anyway, we would go do the show where Lee Corso puts the mascot head on,
right.
and then the show would be over. We'd all go away, and the first football game would be played, and then we'd come back and do a cut in, go through the whole makeup, all that again, and so then we would wait for the second game to be played, and cut in, makeup a bit. And then we would wait for the third game to be played. Again, then we have a wrap-up show that is taped after those games are played that airs the next morning. So we get out of there at 2 o'clock in the morning. So you start at 8 a.m. and you're done at 2 a.m. But it was a wonderful experience. Terrific crew. And just Lee also liked pancake makeup. Can't do that now with high def, but he's just an absolute pleasure to work with. What a pro. Yeah. So were the other two.
Yeah.
Herb.
Kirk Herbstreit.
Yeah.
And so Nick Lachey showed up that day, didn't he?
Oh, yes. Well, yes. Well, that was the second time I worked with College Game Day. It was an absolutely beautiful, I think it was September morning, and this limo, and I went outside after I set up. I just couldn't stay in there. And there was nobody in there anyway, because I always come so early. So I'm out there, and a limo pulls up. And out of the limo is Nick Lachey. I can't believe my eyes because I'm not thinking of him in sports, And he said, hello. He said, I'm Nick Lachey, and I'm here for College Game Day. So I said, I'm Lauren, the makeup lady. Come on in the trailer. And here, they had him for a short-lived time for commentary. On the set there for College Game Day. So it was an absolute pleasure to meet him.
How did you know who he was?
Well, he was on TV. He was a, celebrity. I can't remember what he was on. I mean, he was, currently, he was a star by then, very well known by then.
Yeah.
But he wasn't married yet, so that's...
I think he married Jessica Simpson, but I don't know.
No.
No?
No.
Really?
No, I don't think it was Jessica Simpson. Maybe first, but he's not now.
Oh, yeah, no, not now.
Right.
Not now. I thought maybe early in the days.
I don't know. But anyway, he's a total pro. Absolute pleasure to work with him all day long, too.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So when people get older, does anything help with wrinkles?
Well, you need to use a day cream and a night cream. By putting a good cream on your skin once in the morning, once at night, it's like putting water on a sponge. So that way it softens the lines. It's not going to cure them, but it's just like putting water on a sponge. Keep putting the water on a sponge, it stays moist and puffy. You forget to put the water on the sponge, and it dries out and gets flat. That's what skin does.
Interesting. Now, it's easy for me to talk about sports because it's been part of my life, my whole life. But I'm also interested in politics. We've had a lot of politicians come in, and we have them as they run for various offices. One day I was going to vote over in Lincoln Elementary in Mount Lebanon, and there's a big hullabaloo right outside of the voting booths. And I went for a run, and I thought right after my run, I'm going to go vote. And so I see this crowd there, and I see these guys with wires coming out of their ears and sunglasses, and I walked up to one of them, and I said, what is going on? And he said, President Clinton is here. I said, really? He's like, right over there. And there was a group of probably 35 women standing around him, and he's holding court with them. He's talking to them. And I look, And I think, oh my goodness. And this is when Hillary was running against Barack Obama in the primary. So he came to Mount Lebanon to help tell people to vote for his wife. And so after I go vote, I come out and I asked that Secret Service agent, I said, where is he walking to go back to the limo? And he says he's going here and he's coming down here. And they had it all scripted. I said, if I stand here, will I be able to, meet him? And he said, sure. And so he did exactly what they said. He walks over and I shook his hand and I started asking him questions about politics because that's just who I am. I ask questions. I mean, a television talk show host asks questions. I mean, how about that? Yeah. And so he talked to me for 7 minutes about different things, and it was just I really enjoyed him, and I asked him to be on our show. And he said, well, call the foundation and see what they say. So we're still waiting for you, President Clinton. We'd love to have him. But you met President Clinton, and you did his makeup, and tell me, and we have a picture of that, tell me about your interaction with President Clinton.
Well, I was with Stu Emery, who was the reporter that day, and our KDK photographer, because you just don't drive up to the airport when the president is in town, So we all go, we walk in, and right away, Secret Service, Stu said, I have Lori Geiger here, and the Secret Service says, makeup lady's here, I'm bringing her up, into us. So I go up, they take all my stuff, even my purse, and I'm like, I want my purse with me. I said, my ID's in there and everything. He says, don't worry, we know who you are. So they take all my stuff, because they're going to check it out.
Yeah.
And they're not giving it back to me.
Yeah.
Until,
right.
The president.
Smart.
So, exactly. So then they put me in a room, and I have to wait for the president. So I can hear them say where he is. The president has landed. The president is coming out of the plane. First, his staff arrives, and they come in, and they said there's a telephone call for the president. So the president then walks in, and he looks at me on the chair, and he said, "Hi, I'm Bill Clinton." He said, I got to take this phone call. I'll be right with you. So he took the phone call, and that phone call was the Rodney King verdict.
Jeez.
Yeah. So,
wow.
So anyway, so then he had to leave, and they had a separate room all checked out for me to do his makeup. And so then we were talking, and I read People magazine just because I'm meeting all these people. And I want to be able to talk to them about, and I read where he liked to read. And I said, oh, President Clinton, what are you reading now? I hear you like to read. And he said, oh, I just finished The Client by John Grisham. And so we talked about the book, And then he said, okay, after I do this, he was there for the radio speech, but the makeup was for the TV interviews after the speech. So, and I knew we weren't going to leave. Our crew wasn't going to leave until the last vapor of Air Force One left, because I knew they weren't going to leave without me. But he said, can you stick around and wipe this off for me? So I did, of course, so I had to wipe him off. And then the next time I worked with him was in the second term, and he was campaigning for somebody around here, and it was at the old convention center. And it was raining. It was raining very, very, very hard. And so we were all up there. You got to get there hours early because they got to check you out and everything. And we were upstairs in the back of this building. It was a huge building. And the roof leaked. And it was shorting out the escalator. And when it did, it made this crack sound that sounded too much like a gunshot. And they would not bring the president up that escalator. How they got him in, I don't know. The building's gone now, it doesn't matter. But that's how careful they are with the president, And he came up and he recognized it right away. And he said something to me. He said, you're from KDKA. He said, do you know John Cigna? And I said, well, that's radio, but yes, because we did radio's promos with John. And he said, well, you tell him I said hi. So I did.
John Cigna was a big radio star and for KDK for many years. Many years.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that Bill Clinton wanted to say hello to him.
Exactly. I don't know how he knew of John, and if he talked to him, he must have talked to him before because he liked him, you know, but it's just
So you
his memory.
Yeah, right. I mean, he was, what a brilliant guy, and personable too. I thought he was very personable. Did you think that?
You mean President Clinton?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he talked to you
Yeah.
like nobody else was in the room.
Right, right. And I think the great politicians just have that. And speaking of that, you also had President Obama and Joe Biden. Talk about your interactions with them.
Well, I met Obama and Biden when they were on the campaign trail, first up that year after the National Democratic Convention. That would have been 2007? Yeah. And it was for 60 Minutes. And we were at the airport, all set up in this room from when they got off this airplane. So we were in this hotel room, big one. I mean, there was a living room, and there was a bedroom over here and a bedroom over here. They weren't staying in it. This was just our staging room. So they would each have like a little, you know, quiet time to freshen up or something. Anyway, we're all sitting out here, and you know, he would have been a Senator Obama at the time.
Yes.
He came over and he said, knew my name. He says, Lori, you know, the Brack, you know. I'm like, oh, Brack, you know. I'm like, yeah. And he said, can you do something with these dark circles? He said, I had a really late night. Well, he certainly did. It was the National Democratic Convention. We were the first stop, Pittsburgh was, the first stop on their campaign trail after that convention.
Wow. Wow, how about that?
And then did his makeup, and then the producer does his thing and talks, you know. And then, you know, Mr. Biden comes out, President Biden now, and yeah, no, he was, you know, just talking. He was so relaxed. I'd have been like, whoa, I'm on the campaign trail, you know. Yeah. Very relaxed, very prepared, both of them. Very, very prepared.
Yeah, yeah. So interesting, so interesting. But you also, not only presidential politics, but we have a picture of you and Sophie Maslow. I mean, Sophie Maslow had a big presence in Pittsburgh as a council person and then the mayor for many, many years. Talk to me about your experiences with Sophie Maslow.
I first met Sophie when she was answering phones on Children's Hospital Telethon when she was the president of council.
How about that?
Because at the time we had celebrities, local celebrities, answering the phones to take the pledges, you know. And so she wanted her makeup. She was the only pledge I did, but she wanted her makeup done, so I did her makeup. So then, you know, we lost Mayor Caligiuri, and she became the mayor. So then I did her makeup there too. I mean, I would take a station Jeep and go up to her office and do her makeup for her speech, like the budget address, and that's what the picture that I showed you was one of her budget. So, so anyway, she would. I lost my train of thought because I'm thinking about talking to her.
Sophie Maslow.
So Sophie, yes.
And so when you were interacting with her, like what were your impressions of her as you were working with her?
Oh, she was just a girlfriend. She was like talking to a girlfriend. We used to talk about the proper consistency of cut out cookie dough, you know. But that day, when she had to then run, you know, when that term was over and she had to run for mayor, the station was doing a debate, and I did our debates. And so I get downstairs. I was doing, the newsroom was in the basement, and I went down to everybody's desk, Patty, Ray, Bob Cudson, all of these people. I went to their desks and did their makeup before the newscasts. So I get downstairs, and the news director, Jim Esser, at the time, and Dane Toppich, who wrote speeches and did things, or pacing. I'm like, what's the matter with you two? He says, oh, you know, the deadline is 5 o'clock for the mayor to say she's coming to the debate, and she didn't. I said, oh, she already called me. She's coming. And she says, well, she called you? I said, yeah. She wanted to make sure she was going to get her makeup done. And they're like, I said to these guys, don't ever underestimate the makeup lady.
Yeah, right. I mean, you became friends with Sophie Maslow.
That's right.
She had your number.
Well, she also, well, they didn't believe me. They had to call and confirm that. Said, whatever, she's coming.
They don't believe you.
You know, right. So, she told me a funny story. She loved tomatoes. Loved tomatoes. Went to the strip every Saturday. Got her tomatoes. Friends would say, Sophie, why don't you just grow some of your own? So one year she decided to do that. She goes out, gets all the stuff, the steaks, the Thai things, and, you know, and she babied these things, you know, and she said, oh my gosh, she said, this was a lot of work. She said, by the time I bought all that stuff and did everything I was supposed to do, it cost me probably about $15 a tomato.
But garden tomatoes taste so good.
She gave it up, went back to shopping in the strip.
Back to the strip district. That's funny. And so you've done a lot of the mayors in Pittsburgh, Tom Murphy, Luke Ravenstahl, a whole bunch of them. What are the ones that come to your mind that you work with as far as the mayors of Pittsburgh?
Well, Bill Peduto.
Bill Peduto.
They hired me to do his makeup the day of his, you know, installation, or, you know, whatever you call when he's inauguration, yes, when you swear him in.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting there, and he's playing with this watch, and I said, "That's pretty." And he says, "This is my grandfather's." He said, "It doesn't work, but this is how I have my grandfather with me today."
That's great. I love that.
Isn't that lovely?
I love that.
And so, and he went out on stage and had a rest of his wonderful evening.
That's a cool little antidote right there, a little story.
I liked him. He was really nice. And it didn't matter if we were out at a restaurant. He would say hello.
Really?
Sure. He was out and about town.
Yes, he was.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And how about going back? What are other mayors that you can recall from Pittsburgh that you worked with?
Well, it was Mayor Caligiuri. He was very quiet. He was a handsome man. He really didn't take much. And then there was Sophie, and then we did, you know, Tom Murphy was a wonderful guy to work with. I have not worked with our current mayor, though. So everybody up to our current mayor.
Yeah. Yeah, I read an article that said that one of the Rooney wives, they were at all these dinners, and she said that she liked the politicians. She liked talking to the politicians because they were very personable, and they would talk to you. And so they were trying to get votes, and they're trying to be popular. But, you know, I think some of that is maybe an act for some people, and some are people that are just down to earth, like it sounds like Sophie Maslow and you talking about tomatoes and cookie cutouts.
Yeah, another thing with her, my father-in-law, Colonel Vincent Geiger, when he came home from war, he worked for, I forget whoever, the Equitable, who owned Gateway Center at the time, and he managed Gateway Center. And her husband was a friend of my father-in-law's, and my father-in-law got him a job. I guess he was having trouble finding, and they were always so very, very thankful to my father-in-law. So, I mean, maybe that's why she was like extra nice to me or something, because she and her husband just had the greatest respect for my father-in-law.
Yeah, that's great. And so also governors of Pennsylvania. We have a picture of you with Bob Casey. So talk about Bob Casey, and there's now Senator Casey, so the son and the father. Talk about your interactions with them.
Well, you know, Governor Casey was the first governor that I worked with. And I don't remember the project, but it was Drew Mignot producing again. And he was did his makeup, very, very nice. So years later, now his son is, you know, a senator. And we had a debate at the station, and so I decided to take my picture with Drew and you know, Governor Casey, and show him, look, I did your father's makeup, and now I'm doing yours. And he looked at that picture and said, you know, it's like anybody, you know, he got a little quiet. It was just his dad, you know. He's like, this is really neat. So his assistant or whatever took that picture of me with him, and then looking over his shoulder at that picture of his dad. So there you go, 2 Bob Caseys.
No, I mean, it's interesting to hear that story because my father passed in 1971. It's over 50 years ago. And when you have someone that passed a while back, every once in a while you'll meet somebody and they tell you they knew him and they had a story about him. And so when someone talks about a loved one that is gone, it is like handing them a present. And that's how I feel. I just met a 93-year-old woman who went to high school with my father, and she's telling me about how my father's girlfriend back at the time, I didn't know he had a girlfriend, and she's telling me about her and what it was like, and I was thinking, oh my goodness gracious, like this is a gift that you're giving me. And so I think that's what you gave the younger Bob Casey, was a gift from his father, showing about working
And
with his
now
father.
he looks like his father.
Yeah. How about that? I mean, he's one of the senators are the 100 most powerful people in the United States. So there's 2 in every state, and Bob Casey, I guess he's running for re-election at the time of this taping. But his father lost a lot of elections before he became governor. Like, a lot of people don't know that. I think Abraham Lincoln was the same way. He lost a bunch of elections, and then when they won and they did what they did, that's what you remember about him. Bob Casey, another thing about Bob Casey, the governor, was that he had an organ transplant, and I think it was here in Pittsburgh. And a lot of people were upset because they thought that, like, they put Bob Casey at the top of the list because he was the governor. Well, UPMC pushes back on that, and they say, no. We have a list. There's no names on that list. It's just how sick you are. When you're the sickest, you go to the top of the list. And I know about the organ donation world, and that's how I know about that story. So a lot of people thought that Bob Casey got preferential treatment, and it's just not true. He was just that sick to save his life. So that's politics, but I want to go back to a couple of other people that you've worked with, and we have some pictures of them. One of the real icons of newscast anchor in Pittsburgh, KDKA, Bill Burns. So we have a picture of Bill Burns, and so talk about Bill Burns.
Well, when I first started at the station, Bill Burns had, really only used powder. But I introduced myself to him one day. Mr. Burns, I'm Lori Geiger, I'm the makeup now, and he says, I don't wear any makeup. And I said, okay. And so I go back to Patty. Patty heard this. Patty says, don't worry.
Patty Burns is his daughter,
yes,
who was
Patty
also
Burns.
a huge star in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's all happy she's getting makeup, right? She says, don't worry, he'll warm up to you. So anyway, about a week later, I go past his desk. Good morning. I just, let him alone. He says, Miss Makeup. I said, yes. He says, can you cover this? And it was just a sunspot. And I said, yes, I can. He says, okay. So he sits back in his chair already. Do it all. I made this thing disappear, okay? And he went, good job. I'll see you tomorrow. Meaning we're going to do this again. And he never went on the air without me. Promos. We even went to Art Rooney's funeral together. Yeah. That was a tough one for him. That was his friend. He was his friend. And so, we do the makeup at the station. We go over and we're there. And I touch him up before his hits.
It's interesting because we had Art Rooney Jr. here, not Sr. We did 6 hours with Art Rooney Jr., 3 2-hour interviews. He wrote a 500-page history of the Pittsburgh Steelers. His long-term memory is unbelievable. He was talking about back in the 40s and the 50s and about like it was yesterday, and I couldn't believe it. And one of the things in that book was about his father. He talked a lot about his father, obviously, because he was the original owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he said that he was a big, Irish Catholic guy, and they did the rosary. said the rosary every night at dinner. But the one thing about Art Rooney Sr. was that he felt that he should go to funerals. He thought that was the best way to really pay respects to people, was to go to the funeral of the person or someone that he knew and their mother, father, whatever passed away. And it was a big thing with him. So you're saying that the Art Rooney Sr. funeral was hard for Bill Burns.
Sure, it was his friend.
It was his friend.
Yeah, and you know, to go back to that meeting I told you about, it was Dan Jr., not the senior. I'm just correcting myself.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was, you know, Dan and Art.
Yeah. I mean, the Rooneys are.
Yeah, I don't call him by the first name either.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, right. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
And those interviews we did with Art Jr. was incredible. I mean, just to learn about the Steelers. Now, you were on Sports Illustrated. Were you in the swimsuit issue, or what were you with Sports Illustrated?
No.
No?
Once again, we go back to Jerome Bettis.
Well, but when you tell people you were on Sports Illustrated, do they think it was a swimsuit?
Oh, they go
issue?
straight to that. Yeah, like, really? I'm like, because why else would I be in Sports Illustrated? Yeah. But actually, that was a story that they were doing the year of the Super Bowl. They were doing a day in the life of Jerome Bettis. And I did Jerome Bettis for all of our KDK stuff. And so here I am, you know, this was what we were doing, you know, we were doing something with Jerome. And so he's in my makeup chair, and I don't even know who these people are in the makeup room. I don't know who they are. I just know Jerome's coming, got to do his makeup, and, you know, he's got to go. And I had no idea who these people were. So anyway, so they did a day in the life of Jerome Bettis, and they followed him all over town that day. So anyway, okay, so they go away. That's just another, you know, project we did. That was coming up, you know, for right of the Super Bowl, you know, and so that goes away. A couple weeks later, month, whatever it was, I had a friend call me and say, "Lori, is that you in Sports Illustrated?" I'm like, "Nah." She says, "No, you're doing Jerome Bettis's makeup." And it says, you know, at KDK Studios. And I said, "Really?" So I go out and buy a copy, and I'll be darned. There it was. They took a picture of me doing Jerome's makeup.
So it wasn't the swimsuit
It was
issue?
not the swimsuit edition. No. But it was a pleasant surprise to see that.
I'll bet. I mean, that is was so widely distributed. You know, I'm thinking here, three of the most impactful first round draft picks of the Steelers. First one was Joe Green and Terry Bradshaw and Franco Harris. And so we have a really great picture of you and Terry Bradshaw. Now, these are three guys that went to 4 Super Bowls, and they won 4 Super Bowls. People in Pittsburgh got so spoiled. They just think that if you go, that's what we used to think. If you go to the Super Bowl, you win the Super Bowl. But actually, there's a team that doesn't win the Super Bowl. But we went to the first 4, won the first 4, and these are 3 guys that were such huge parts of those championships. So we have a really great picture of you and Terry Bradshaw. So talk about Terry Bradshaw.
Well, that was in the beginning of his television career, and it started at KDKA. And he was part of our sports team that year. And I was doing his makeup for this promo. John Steigerwald, John Sanders was still there. And we had this whole, you know, shoot with everybody there. But he's very personable, needless to say. And he talks to everybody there. So he's, you know, doing his makeup is like a moving target, you know. So, and he's like, "Hey, hi, you know, hi, you know." So anyway, he even, okay, get him all done. As soon as he stands up, our photographer was Lori Sperling, one of our news photographers, and she was there. And those two started throwing the football back and forth. I mean, you know, this is exciting for Lori, another Lori. She was able to handle that football. If he'd if he'd have thrown that at me, I'd have, it would have knocked me over. I mean, just think about that. Lori's littler than I am,
Yeah. But she had good hands.
But yes, so I must think it's come the strength of holding that camera up. I don't know. I was very impressed with her at that point.
Yeah.
But all I'm thinking about, Terry, no. Don't start sweating. Don't start, running around and sweating,
The moving target.
The moving
is starting
target.
to throw football with your makeup on.
Yes, yes, right. So that was a great promo. Everybody had on blue V-neck sweaters. They looked so nice.
And he's become a huge star after football.
Yeah, he
with
did.
His
Absolutely.
NFL pregame shows and all of that. He had his own little show himself. But what a immense star he was, along with Joe Green. Did you ever deal with Joe Green?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mean, he had that famous Coke commercial where he threw the jersey back to the kid. And Franco Harris. How about Franco Harris?
We worked with Franco a lot. He was just absolutely wonderful. I mean, this goes far back as when Patrice King Brown was on Pittsburgh Today, her Pittsburgh Today, and he would co-host sometimes with her. Like if John was on vacation or something, He was just wonderful to work with.
Yeah, I've met him, and he really has a really super nice personality. Now, Patricia Neal, Olivia Walton, we have something to show about her. What is it? It's her book, right? Is that what you brought?
She must have been on the show to promote that book at the time. But you think of her, well, she was a beautiful movie star, and you would think of her as Olivia Walton because she did the original Homecoming, that then there was the show after that movie, the original movie, then they did the series. She was not Olivia Walton in the series, but in this movie she was. So this is what I'm thinking, right? And she was just lovely, and her book read like a soap opera. Her life, she was really something, but she had tragedy in her life, which is terrible. Her baby was killed when the pram ran away. Oh my gosh.
So you read the book?
I did read the book.
Yeah.
Oh, that was excellent.
And she was nice to work with.
Oh, she was lovely. I mean, the book, and you're like, you meet this kind, gentle woman that is so appreciative of your makeup and job, and then you read that book. I'm like, wow, get her back here. I have questions.
Yeah, right.
And she was lovely.
And how about the Munsters? Grandpa on the Munsters, Al Lewis. The Munsters was big in the Addams Family. Those two shows were kind of quirky, and a lot of people thought that was my family, but that's two Ds, we're one D. And so
right.
You had Grandpa Al Lewis of the Munsters.
Right. Back in the 80s, we had done Pittsburgh Today again with Patrice King Brown, Nostalgia Week. Joyce Richmond was the producer, and she just would come up with some of the best ideas. And so we took this 1 week, and we did, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So we had everything about, like, the 20s had a flapper, and I had to research makeup for these decades, to be able to do the makeup for the people on the show, because we had fashion and everything. So by the time you get to the 50s, well, we did some of those TV shows, and then we did some in the day of the 60s. We went up to the 60s, and that is when Al Lewis was on the show. And he looked just like like Grandpa, even without that exaggerated makeup. He sounded the same, all his mannerisms were exactly the same. He was so much fun to work with. But that's another moment where I'm thinking, oh my gosh, here I am. I watched the show, and when I was growing up, watching that show, I would never think that I'd be sitting here with Al Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, life is a series of moments, is what I have come to, I think, believe. And we're having a moment here today, you and I've been looking forward to this, and I'm just so happy that you're here, because I remembered you doing the makeup with me on that commercial. And I think I have to think like the success of you, Lori, is not only how well you do the makeup, but I think it's your personality too. You're just so easy to talk to and friendly, and that's what I remembered. So I think talk about that, like your interactions and how important were they to kind of maybe almost disarm some people whenever you're working with them.
Well, exactly right. I didn't talk to them about what they were going to talk about. Talked about them, everything but. It relaxed them a little bit. People kind of like to talk about themselves a little bit, you know. You know, you have somebody that's nervous, just ask them if they have kids. There you go. They'll just tell you all about the kids, you know, and they're kind of forgetting about their nervousness a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I mean, and there'll be things that they'll ask me, they won't ask the producer, like, you know, when Christopher Reeve was saying, how long is this going to take? You know, I'm going to get out of here for that snowstorm, you know. Yeah. But he didn't ask the producer that. He's asking me. So that made me have to ask the producer.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, you know, with hairdressers, you know, they're known to be someone that you could talk to, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you have your hairdresser, you come in for every so often, and a lot of people just really tell their life story to their hairdressers. Is that the same thing with you? Do you get that same kind of thing when you're working with people?
No, not really. I don't think, like for a hairdresser, they go to them on a regular basis. You know, and I run into people, you know, every once in a while, you know. So I didn't see the people that we work with in commercials, except our regular people, that I do find that. You know, they'll tell me, you know, I haven't been feeling so good or whatever, you know, or that kind of stuff, you know, but.
What do you think? You know, you started Turkey Foot High School and people are laughing at you thinking, I'm going to go work in Pittsburgh and do what you do.
Yeah.
So now you did it, Lori. And so now looking back on your career, you're still working, but like looking back on the bulk of your career, what are your thoughts about all that?
I did it.
Yeah.
But no, really, I mean, I worked hard. I mean, you just don't do that. I mean, you had, like, when I started in television, well, even for my job, I had to prove myself. I had to prove that I could do makeup on other people. And then for television, you know, I had to prove that my makeup would show up well on TV, because there was a lot of changes that happen. You know, lighting changes, and of course now we have all this technology, you know, it's really, in different lighting situations, there's a whole lot to learn. There's, you know, for instance, say cooler colors, like plum colors and pinks and that kind of thing. Anything blue-based shades can cancel in certain lights. So a blue chroma key, fluorescent lighting, being outside in daylight, it's just what the camera does. For some reason, it just doesn't capture the blue. So for instance, a blue-based pink lipstick can look burgundy on the air or outside. You know, a blue-based red can actually appear to be black or a dark brown, because the camera's just not seeing that blue. Anyway, these are all the things that you have to take into consideration when you're doing shoots, and so I worked very hard to learn that. And I also, our stage hands and engineers would always tell me when they made changes in the studio, and I would say, okay, no, we've dropped the lights, and this is going to be like this, and you know, so that I knew how I needed to adjust to that light. Before high def came along, there was a monitor up in projection that just ran constantly, and everybody would kind of study that. And so one of our engineers said, Lori, there's a new type of television coming. It's called high def television.
Yeah. He
says, you should come up here and look at that. So I would go up there and I would just watch the different scenarios of that high def television. And one day he said to me, Lynn, isn't that something? He says, you're going to be able to see dimples on a golf ball. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is not good for people.
Yeah.
This is not good. So then I had to start adjusting for that too.
Oh, sure. I mean, my daughter went to Penn State. There was a very a famous volleyball player, a real tall, blonde-haired girl who played volleyball for Penn State. They won national championships. She was picked on the United States Olympic team.
Wow.
And she came to our house for dinner one night. And you know me, I ask questions. And so I said, so, you know, now with the high-def TV and you're going to play in the national championship game and everybody's going to see you, do you wear makeup before you play? I don't even know why I thought about it. Do you wear makeup before you play the game? She said, absolutely. I mean, we're going to play and everyone's going to see us real up close and personal. I was surprised by that, but I guess I'm not surprised by that because you talk about high-def TV.
Right, yeah. Actually, it goes back to taking care of your skin because you don't want to use as much makeup. That was a big misconception when it first started. Everything shows up on TV, so thick makeup is going to show up on TV.
Right. So, have some of the guys, have they been the ones that say, "Can you wash this off before I go"? Is it guys that ask you to do that?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Bill Clinton, he asked you.
He wanted, yeah, exactly. But you know, sometimes when I've worked with doctors, they wanted it on because they wanted something to talk about with their patients.
Oh.
So the patient would be looking at the face and listening about the makeup, and he was able to get his, heart rate and all that, whatever he was doing, rather than having a nervous patient.
Yeah. Well, can I be like Bill Clinton and can you wash mine off?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Lori. Yes. I mean, this has been so fun. This has been so fun. I knew it would be, and it was. And this is just great to spend some time with you and talk about your stories and about your career in makeup. And we've been talking about this for a while, but we finally made it happen.
Yeah,
and it's going to
thank you.
You're welcome. It's going to be all through parts of Pittsburgh, and it'll be uploaded to YouTube, and anybody worldwide will be able to get to see this. So I'm just so thrilled that you come. Our producer Mitch was just really happy to hear all of this, even though it's just something different. He always says, Lee, you always do something different, and you're something different. 25 years, never a show on makeup, but today we did it with Lori Geiger, the makeup artist of Pittsburgh. Lori, thank you so much for coming and sharing your career.
Thank you for having me.
Us.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I appreciate you joining us. I hope you've really enjoyed our time with the makeup of the stars, the Pittsburgh stars, Lori Geiger. I just want to leave you with this. If you, your brother, your sister, your mother, your uncle, your aunt, if you needed an organ transplant to save your life, would you take it? Sure you would. And so with that in mind, I just urge you all to be organ donors and give the gift of life. It's a gift that keeps on giving. We're talking about Governor Casey. Governor Casey's life was extended from an organ transplant. So please be an organ donor. Thank you for watching. Please join us for another edition of One on One. I'm your host, Lee Adams. Take care of yourself.